Hi, good evening. My name is Jay Rothman, and welcome to Real Men, Real Talk Live. Hi, good evening. Again, my name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show, and I'd like to introduce my co-host this evening. We have Josh Richard coming in from Santa Monica, California, Jeff Fasano coming in from Nashville, Tennessee, and Evis Love Heath, the man of the land from down under. He calls Australia home. Welcome to the show, guys.
Great I love that our opening is New York, and none of us live there.
Well, that may be true, but Jeff, both you and I originated from New York. I know you came from a small borough of New York called Staten Island. I know. I get it. But in any event, welcome to the show, guys. As we wait for some of our viewers and listeners to come in this evening, I'd like to just take a moment to thank you, viewers, for catching the show with us live. If you catch us on replay, you're just on time, your time. Welcome to the show. If you should hear something that you like or love with love, tap your love button on your monitor. If you have any questions or comments throughout the show, please drop them down into the comment section, as this is not a monologue, but a dialogue between all of us. And so, how are all of you men doing this evening? Anything happening? Anything hot that you want to share before we jump into our topic for the night?
Well, man, I might dive in there straight away then, brother. I just mentioned in the green room, we've had some chaotic weather here in the land down under, particularly here on the East Coast where I'm residing. And we went from a 95-degree Fahrenheit, your temperature standard, which would have been our 35, to absolute nearly cyclonic winds in a day. And so I've been cleaning up for a day, getting rid of some trees. And, the beautiful thing about that, though, brothers, is that I want to do a video about this too, that how important crisis has become in terms of bringing people together too. I mean, I'm meeting neighbours that I haven't even known. You know what I mean? So it's been nice in that regards. And obviously another cleanup, 2020. What more can we take?
Wow. Well, glad you're safe, Ev.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.
And Josh, it looks like you're coming close to wrapping up your season on the Disney show that you've been working on for a couple of months now. Before you know it, you're going to be airplane bound for some other part in the world. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I know. I've been on this Disney show for 2 years. So we were talking about that today, and this is our last week of shooting. So it's kind of bittersweet. We're all going to disband and go on to, other people go on to different projects, and that's the way film and TV works. But you get close to these people. And so it's kind of a week for me of, just sort of like honoring this journey that we all had together, and the good times and the bad, and the beautiful people that I met. This job wasn't ideal in the beginning. And so I made a choice that I was going to find my happiness and make the job about relationships. And I've built some really deep, good friends and relationships that I'll carry on from here. So it's been beautiful.
That's what it was like when I worked on Cat and Hudson Roof on Broadway for 6 or 7 months.
Oh yeah. From
the inception of that show at the first table reading to the closing party. And my actor friends told me it's going to be an experience of a lifetime, which it was. But they said there's something going to happen at the end of that run that you'll never be prepared for. And working on that show, it was such a close-knit family. Because you're with each other 8 days a week because there's 2 shows on Saturdays, and I lost it. I literally cried my eyes out at the closing curtain of that because I wouldn't be doing that anymore. And that's what my friends didn't tell me was going to happen, that I would never have been prepared for. And I'm still friends with those people and the major actors who were in it. But yeah, it was a family every night. It was wonderful.
Beautiful.
Love that, Jeff. Love that, man.
All right, well, guys, it's that time. Tonight's topic is an interesting one because as I waited for the pre-show production room studio to open up, it was open. I was alone. There was no one in there but me. And as we got closer to the hour, you guys weren't there. And we had a technical difficulty, and you guys started to play around a little bit with tonight's topic of, we have to trust, we got to surrender. We don't know, and it's okay. And in the moment, I didn't trust it, so I actually pushed the show back to about 7:15 out here in Arizona to give us a little bit of wiggle room if we should need it. But it's interesting. We just all made some adjustments, and somehow, like magic, we all showed up in the studio tonight. But it was a metaphor for tonight's show and topic, which is, in fact, on trust, surrender, and the unknown. And what I'd like to do is just kind of highlight a couple of the questions that I'd like to see us all kind of dive into and kind of explore together. One is, do we trust ourselves or others? What role does self-doubt play in our inability to trust ourselves or others? What role does intuition play in learning how to trust? How can we learn to trust ourselves over outside forces and influences? And can we become empowered in the process of surrendering? And what does surrendering mean? Is it a sign of weakness or is it a sign of strength? And of course, are we trusting untrustworthy people? And how can we change our patterns? What does surrender mean, and how do we surrender to the process? There's a few more. That's more than enough. Each one of these, trust, surrender, and the unknown could be topics of their own. And so let's jump right in. I'm going to invite Josh Richards, since you're seated right next to me, to open us up. I'll put you in a hot seat in a moment. And kind of, why don't you warm us up this evening?
Oh, man. All right. Wow. Well, trust and surrender have been two of my biggest lessons in this life, and some of the harder ones to get. And I was the type of guy that if, the square peg didn't fit in the round hole, I would, bust out the chainsaw and the belt sander and grind that thing down and then sledgehammer that puppy in there and make it fit to my will. And I wasn't dancing with the universe, and I wasn't co-creating. I was forcing my will, of which was exhausting and left me often disappointed. And so I've only recently, within the last 2-3 years, started to really sort of master what that trust is. And it's not waving and surrender, and it's not waving the white flag. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Yeah. It's this beautiful dance where you go with the flow. You feel the universe. You see the nudges and the little guidance, and you release that need to control. And I think that's the hardest part. Is our brain loves to predict our world, and that's what it thrives on. It wants to keep us safe, so it wants to predict every outcome. So learning to fully lean into surrender is a unique experience, and I think it's challenging for human beings in general because we're fighting our brain. Yeah. But when we do get it is when my life just became simple and joyful and a beautiful experience. And it's been, so I fully, and it's a process. I still have to, I get caught and my brain will work its way in, and I have to remind myself to trust, lean into surrender, and dance with the universe.
Yeah.
Beautiful, brother. And I can already feel this is going to be a beautiful show up in the clouds.
Yeah,
it's something. Sorry, Jay. It's just something so different for men to be talking in such beautiful words that Josh is explaining.
Yeah.
There. You know, you talked about that forcing that us as men have tried to mold things. You know, to go our way and really not allow, like Josh is saying, the universe, and not allowed to release things to be able to provide the expansion and growth within our lives. And man, I put my hand up double times for that, you know, happening in my life. And probably only 2 years ago when I talked about my fall, you know, I had to close down a lot of stuff. I had to, you know, leave particular friends. And, you know, that is showing a lot of vulnerability, but most importantly, trust within yourself.
Yeah.
And Jay, I mean, you touched on an important thing, and you know, you mentioned in the green room just at the start of the show that you were all alone. You know, how did that feel sitting with yourself? You know, with your own thoughts about, well, this show going to go on air on time. But in the end, man, the thing is that independence for me in that all alone time, it freed my mind.
Yeah.
It freed my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know, I was thinking, what comes first? Surrender, trust into the unknown, trust, surrender. I've been thinking about that since we decided to do this. And the question that would come up for me is, what are we surrendering? What are we surrendering? What are we surrendering? Not to, but what are we surrendering? And Josh hit on it, especially guys. Everybody tries to control the outcome of everything, because when we're faced with the unknown, when a doorway opens and there's nothing on that other side, it's about surrendering into ourselves. But all of us, as Josh said, in our minds, we need to know what's in the unknown. We need to know what's in the unknown. And if we can surrender into that first and realizing we're trying to control everything, the next part comes with trusting ourselves in it. Because we're never trusting anyone else. We're trusting ourselves. So what it really comes down to is looking at how we're trying to control something. If we're approaching the unknown, how does that make us feel? Do we need to know what's on the other side of that doorway that opens up into nothingness? And then begin to trust ourselves, our talents, gifts, our abilities, and who we are, that who we're bringing to the unknown and what we're bringing to the unknown is us. And then that unknown, that open doorway where there's nothing there, if we can look at it as a complete blank canvas, that we're going to create something on that canvas, but it's coming from our heart space and our soul.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love that.
And particularly this year, brother. I mean, the only thing that has been certain is the uncertainty.
Yeah.
Right.
When we surrender to that, absolutely nothing is perfect, man. You'll never always have everything figured out.
Yep.
Then you can start building these things that we call resilience, understanding that when, you know, certain conflicts arise within our lives, then from the gut space, we know that we're going to be confident within ourselves to provide the solutions when some of these obstacles come around again.
Yeah, and as they come, you know, not to try and pre-predict or pre-worry, just let go and then deal with it when it comes. And we know how old are all of us? We've got, decades behind us that we made it through every situation, and we're all here breathing, living, and doing well and thriving, trust in that.
You know what I loved? I loved in our production meeting when Josh said, and he said it right in the opening, dancing with life. Another friend of mine also talks about looking at life as a dance and going with the flow of the dance and just dancing with life. Just think about that word and just that word, dancing with life, how easy that sounds. So, folks out there, maybe you could look at that word and look at your life and see where you're butting heads with life, coming up to blind spots or blockages, and you're trying to bust through it, as Evis and Josh said, fitting the square peg in the round hole, and then throw the word dance in there.
I want to take us back on a memory lane through this question I'm going to ask you guys right now, because we're talking as adults about trust and how at times we lack it. We either lack it in ourselves, we lack it in others, and then we find ourselves many times let down. And sometimes some of us go right to, I don't have anyone in my life I trust. Everyone's let me down. We've heard either we thought those thoughts or we've heard other people share them with us at some point in our life. But I think where I'd like to take this conversation is to really look at, why is that? Where in our life do so many of us get sidetracked or off track? When does it happen that we are untrustworthy, not only of others, but of ourselves? We don't trust ourselves. How many times have we seen someone in social media post a question to put it out there for every one of their friends to give them their opinion on something because they're unsure of a decision that they're contemplating? I see it all the time. And what I've learned from that is that it's only going to confuse us more. Getting all these different perspectives, of which they're not necessarily right for us because they're not from us. Yet we still lack self-confidence we lack confidence to know what's best for us. Where does it come from that we, as adults, many of us lack trust in our ability to make the right decision? Where do you think that comes from, Ev?
Here we go. Back to that inner child, man. And look, like I've talked about my experience about the fall and the separation. And, I guess at that time, this is when I started to understand, understand, and overstand that anyone can leave us at any time, man. You don't have control over anything. And nothing is guaranteed. So I really came to that point in a particular part through this journey over the last few years that I had to really trust within myself. So through the time all alone, I was able to build that confidence within myself. Where there was times if I was trying to force, don't go, that was a part of me as a child playing the abandonment game again because my mum and my dad wasn't around as a kid. So I found that part of myself through that experience. And when I was able to really understand the importance of what I was learning, and this is a really important point to my brothers, my sisters, that we are in a beautiful learning library down here on planet Earth. And when you start to understand the lessons, the opportunities that may be provided for you around the corner for particular circumstances and situations, then my brothers, you start dancing with the universe. But until that happens and we keep trying to force things, we keep going around in that circle until we've learned the lesson.
Mhm.
And it comes back around
Oh
again.
man, and it will keep
Yeah.
slapping and slapping you in the face.
Oh man, I lived that cycle for so many years. It's painful.
Mary Kelly says, we lost trust as children if our parents have not made us feel secure.
Mm.
It's interesting right now. Mary and I are, in fact, I'm going to plug a book. We are reading this book together. It's called Trust. And I tell you, this book is filled with incredible liquid gold. I think what chapter? We're not even halfway through it. And it's a powerful book to it's brilliantly written. It's written by Yolanda Van Zant. I recently saw her. I think her show is on the Oprah Winfrey Network. But this is a brilliant book that will really bring some clarity to any of our viewers that are doubting trust, what surrender can look like, self-love, boundaries. All of it's in this book. It's just a powerful book. We're reading it together, and it's been beautiful. But I just love what you shared, Ev, because it really does. It begins between the ages of 0 and 7, the first 7 years of our life, when we are impacted by the breach of care that as children we need. We can't be dependent on ourselves. We are dependent on our caretakers, our parents, if that's who's raising us. And when there's a breach of nurturing, of unconditional love, of nourishment, emotional, mental, physical, and even possibly spiritual, we start to have a very, very quick awareness that we're alone. We are not safe.
Mm.
And that's also at about the same age when ego starts to develop within us. And that's ego's role is there now to protect us. And so that's just all part of it. But in any event, Josh, what do you make of all this? What's going on here in this talk tonight?
Something just popped up, an interesting reframe. When I was my most unhappy, is when I was caught in cycles of thinking that life was happening to me. And the beautiful reframe for me, and part of that trust and surrender dance for me, has been to hold fast to the belief that everything's happening for me.
Mm-hmm.
And Ev, you touched on those gifts and those nuggets that come with some of these hard lessons. And when you look for the nuggets and look for the gifts, that's happening for you. Mm-hmm. That's a way to elevate yourself, elevate your mind, elevate your soul, your energy. And, life has its ups and downs. And so, even the bad things can be for you. Mm-hmm. And so switching that reframe for me is where I found a whole lot of happiness and joy, was trusting that everything's happening for me. Yeah. And to allow that dance to happen. Don't resist. Don't put all that energy that we use, to force things or push things back or resist. And I've gotten really sensitive in noticing now resistance in life. And when I feel that resistance over and over again, I'd step back and say, okay, maybe this isn't working. Let me examine another way, or just get out of that thought stream that I need to make this happen, or that this is what's going to be, and let go again. And know that it's all happening for me.
Well, it's interesting. Real quick, Jeff, and then you could jump in. Bronnie Fisher, coming in from overseas, she says, coming in from Australia, thank you for joining us this evening. Actually, it's tomorrow for you. You're actually one day ahead of us, so you actually can let us know what's going to happen tomorrow, because you're out there.
So that we don't have to trust with the unknown of the life that we're living. So Evis can tell us what's going to happen for us tomorrow. Sorry, Jay.
No, it's all good. Between Bronnie and Evis, they probably have the whole country covered for us.
Really?
Bronnie says bad things are happening for a lesson. Jeff, what does that mean? How do you interpret that statement there, brother?
Well, that's part of the dance. As that's why if we could, like Josh just said, if we can look at our life and see that everything is happening for us as we learn and grow, then, the key is that what people get stuck in is if something happens that they label bad or it's a challenge, and then the feelings come up with it, that's where the labels come in. It's the feelings.
Mm-hmm.
What just happened is rotten, it's bad, but then feelings come up with that. So that part of the dance is to allow those feelings to come up, but always look at it like, have your feelings first when something happens, and then ask yourself, what's the gift? What's the lesson? It's happening for me. I will eventually learn from it. I don't have to learn from it right now, but eventually that lesson is going to come and the gift is going to come. It might come 3 days later, a week later, a year later, but that's part of the dance of life. So looking at what is happening is not happening to us, it's happening for us. There's a gift, there's a lesson, and it's all about what am I going to learn about myself with what's happening in life outside of me. But going to the trust part, as Eva said, going back to the inner child, the way we build trust is we begin building the trust within ourselves first. So then it comes back to learning how to honor and value who we are. That's where the trust comes. I honor and value me, so I trust me in the world.
100%.
And that's part of moving from the wounds of the child into the adult. Because, as Mary said, it's that child within us that never received the nurturing from mom and dad, never was, quite possibly not there.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought up abandonment, betrayal. We're alone in the world. So if I can't trust mom and dad, who can I trust?
Right.
So then it's about reparenting that wounded child and then begin that trust within ourselves to know that we have value and that whatever relationship we're going to get into, we're looking at that relationship as we are bringing value to that relationship. Therefore, I can trust myself in that relationship.
Jeff, I love what you said. And if I may piggyback your comments here, I dare our viewers, including you guys, the next time you have self-doubt and you're not trusting something, a circumstance, a situation, a potential decision that you're contemplating, if you can remember to ask yourself in that moment, how old am I feeling right now?
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're willing to go there and ask that simple question, how old am I feeling right now? There's a really good chance it's going to be your younger part of yourself, your inner child. And in that moment, once you have that moment of clarity, we now have the ability to parent ourselves in a way that comes from love and kindness for ourselves. But ultimately what it is, as Mary just said, it's about parenting ourselves, parenting that younger self that's scared to make this choice or scared to jump off the deep end of a diving board even, and know that we can calm our younger self down. And as the adult, we could do for our child, ourself, that we didn't have a parent necessarily to provide to us when we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just a beautiful nugget, a beautiful moment tool to remember to go. Every time we're in fight, flight, fear, uncertainty, to ask, how old am I feeling right now? So that we could then bring ourselves right back to, we're okay. We could talk ourselves off that ledge. It's a powerful tool. I've really learned how to embrace that in my own healing journey. And believe me, that little boy, JJ, is still alive inside. And so I get to practice that ping pong, that volley with him quite often. But the difference is now I don't have to live in the fear anymore. I don't have to live in the distrust. I shared with you guys earlier. This show is about us showing up and sharing our truths, being vulnerable, and sharing things that we necessarily wouldn't share with other people, especially on a live broadcast like this. But where I'd like to go is we've been really honing in on the trust for ourselves and or lack of. Where I want to take a few minutes here to talk about is let's explore not trusting other people. Why do we find ourselves, some of us, in patterns of relationships where some of us feel like we're being let down, not once, not twice, but multiple times in the friends we pick, in the partners we pick, in the jobs we pick, in the bosses we pick. Some may even say the families that we pick. That's another topic for another night. But really, what's behind that? Why do we struggle sometimes with being in relationships that they go south, and there's a breach of an agreement, sometimes a verbal one, sometimes a non-verbal one, a silent agreement. What's behind? Why does that pattern tend to recycle and we get into that loop?
Mm-hmm. Again, I think Jeff, he's hit it right on the head. Coming back to thyself, knowing thyself, now avoiding these toxic people, and man, there's plenty of them around at the moment. Welcome to 2020, man. Glass windows everywhere, but realize that glass breaks, man. So you're going to see a lot of these people, the reflections within your life pop up. That generally is, a reflection of what something is within inside of us that we haven't healed, like we've discussed amongst us tonight. But it also requires you, me, to be totally honest with ourselves.
Yep.
How are these people within your circle, your life, making you feel?
Yeah.
Would you be able to hang out these people? And are they going to have your back in these times of challenges and obstacles? See, this is when you start to see the real colors come to the surface. And like I said, in this year in particular, we're able to see some of these glasses break. And, this allows us to really come back from within, and we start to have a lot more insight, and we start to trust within thyself through the intuitive process of really at the deepness of who we are, at that spiritual being, is what it is about, knowing your intuition.
Okay, after that, we can go into our wrap up. You just spoke for me, Ev.
That's it, fella.
I mean, always bring it. One of the things that I've learned through my little Jeff, with wide eyes open, looking up to try to trust mom and dad that they're going to be there. More than likely they weren't. Then I just transferred that into relationships, that they are innately going to be there. I was looking at it through the eyes of that wounded child, and placing that trust outside of myself. And what I truly feel is that the only person that we need to trust is us. And when we can trust us, whatever happens in any relationship outside of ourselves is a learning experience. And like Ev said, is, wow, that just happened. I need to turn the mirror to me and ask myself, well, why did I get into that relationship? What attracted me to that? Well, that happened. And how could I learn from it? How does that make me feel? And can I use that and look at the mirror of what is inside of me that's mirroring back to me? I know it's so easier said than done. That's a challenge to do it. But if we can live our lives like that, the first thing that we can do, we're in a relationship. Maybe we had blind trust, that we blindly trusted outside of ourselves. If something happens, it happens. Dance with it, as Josh says. Have our feelings about it, and then turn it back to ourselves. Wow. Is there something unhealed inside of me? What happened there that I can look at here? It's not about looking at it and going, oh my God, I screwed up. And then you go into the blame and shame and judgment of yourself. No. It is simply about saying, okay, that happened. What is it within me? Am I blindly trusting someone? And as Jay just said, in that moment, how old am I feeling right now?
Yeah, beautiful. I want to just take a moment here, Jeff, as I process what you just shared. I want to celebrate Jeannie Cash, because what she just did, I'm going to read it out loud. She says, I removed myself from a group of humans this week that were passive aggressive energy vampires. I won't tolerate it. I wish them love and light. Wow. I just want to take a moment here just to celebrate you, Jeannie.
Yeah.
Much power
because-
to you, sister. Much power.
You know what I love? What she said? I removed myself from a group of humans.
We
Think
are
about
all
that.
human.
But think about living a multidimensional experience.
Carrie
I don't know.
Crary says, I used to tell people that how you reflect off of someone should be positive. If not, you need someone new to reflect off of. What do you make of that, Josh?
Yeah, it's you know what I wanted to, Ev talked about sort of that moment where we have to look honestly at ourselves, and relationships are all a mirror. Whether it's your boss, your girlfriend, your good buddies, and the people that cause us triggers and pain and struggle. And it was difficult, or should say it wasn't difficult. I don't want to plant that in anybody's mind. It was a challenge to for the first time look into that mirror and say, what is it about this person that I don't like in myself?
Yeah.
And it's different to do that. But when we can do that, we free ourselves. It's this beautiful weight that comes off when we're able just to accept everything and say, you know what? I'm human. This was my past, but it won't be my future, because you've awakened to it now. So using relationships as that beautiful mirror to teach you new things, and so that you can grow through those old childhood hurts and pains, and those old ghosts that we've locked in the closet and we haven't looked at. Those mirrors are so valuable. I mean, when I got out of a long relationship years and years ago, and I was dating, and throughout dating, it was crazy just to, even like one date or going on 2 dates, the person's reflecting something back that I just hadn't seen before. And it was like, meeting different types of people on just going out for a dinner date, you learn. And I was like, wow, there was so much that I realized about myself during that period, because I was just being exposed to different types of people that were showing me different things about myself.
You know, Jay, one of the questions.
Beautiful, bro. Beautiful, bro.
If I correct me, we talked about our intuition. One of the questions when you let off the show about our intuition, trusting our intuition. And I think we spoke about it last week a little bit. But when we are getting into a relationship with something, there's going to be an inner voice in there, and a knowing that it's important to trust and listen to, and pay attention to that, because as Josh said earlier, we're going to go into our brains, and we might be looking at things through rose-colored glasses, but there is something that's going on in here, in our heart, in our soul space. So just, when that pops up, if we can start paying attention to whatever that is, because it's not happening here. The voices or the feelings come from in here in our heart space, which is our adult space of a knowing space. And if we feel something about someone, no matter who it is, maybe we could just pause, take a break, and listen to that voice and see what's saying, what that voice is saying.
Yeah. It sounds simple, not easy, Jeff.
No, it's not.
It's not easy only because how many of us were taught that in our homes? And so as an adult now, Ev, how do you think we can learn how to tap into and know the difference between if it's a thought coming from our mind, our negative ego space, or coming from our heart space, our soul, which is where our wisdom and intuition live and lie, where all our answers are. How do we learn how to tap into that when we weren't taught as children? And now we are literally stumbling through life, many people, bouncing in and out of that ring of mud and muck, and tired, exhausted, emotionally, mentally, many times physically from disease and spiritually.
Yeah, I've mentioned this in a beautiful question, brother, because I've mentioned this in previous episodes as well. And that's sitting with your thoughts. Don't distract yourself out this time round. Sit in quietness, in stillness. Don't distract yourself, brothers and sisters. When you start to truly understand when these thoughts are coming from and the emotions that these thoughts are recycling, it starts to give us a better understanding that you can be in the driver's seat of how you think. But until you become aware of where some of these decisions, some of these circumstances are coming from, based on your emotions, and I said this in the video the other day, based on your emotions being in the driver's seat, then you will keep finding yourself, like we're saying, in these situations doing the loop. So one of the key things for me, and we've talked about this time and time again, meditation, man. Meditation. You've got to make it a daily practice, particularly in what we're living in 2020. Because like I said the other day, if you come into the year 2021 and you haven't had some of the self-healing and self-care boundaries in place, mental health is going to skyrocket through the roof, and it already has. So being able to sit with yourself, ask yourself where these thoughts are coming from, what are the emotions that these thoughts are creating, then we can start creating a little bit more better solutions within our lives.
What I'd like to do, Ev, that's a beautiful statement you just shared here, is just share. Jazz Star says, I think when we're still in our trauma, red flags and butterflies may feel the same. I missed a lot of them that were blaring in front of me before I started healing. I'm going to invite Jazz to maybe expand on that. Tell us a little bit more. What was a shift for you? What was the moment, the defining moment, when you were able to start to break it down or separate the two? For you, what was your superpower? How did that show itself in your life? And while we're waiting for Jazz to maybe expand upon that a little bit more, I'd like to shift gears here and really dive into the word surrender. Because in modern society, especially as men, we have this belief system that when we're surrendering, we're giving up. When we're surrendering, we're saying, uncle, we're weak, we're less than. But I don't think that's what we're talking about tonight. And so Josh, I'd like to invite you to share from your perspective, what does the essence of surrender mean to you as a man, and how does it and how has it impacted your own journey?
Hmm. When I held, well, first of all, when does life ever turn out how we think it would? And I spent my 20s and 30s trying to force my will, and my expectations, and when life didn't match my expectations, I got more and more depressed and more down, and the thoughts of, me failing that vision and me failing to be able to create that started to create all this self-doubt and shame and thoughts of being a failure, which led to my near suicide after my tech crash, my startup crash, which expanded all of those feelings of being a failure and all that shame. And so I know the dangers very, very well of expectations and trying to force your will. So surrender has been so beautiful to me. And what it means is it means being able to sit with the fear, recognize that your brain has fear or doubt in a certain area. And then to check it, what I do is as Ev talked, that stillness, that quiet time, that pause is extremely important in this process. And to pause and check in with your heart and say, how does this feel? How do I feel about the future? I'm stepping into a huge unknown right now. I've just given up my apartment and I'm about ready to travel for the next 4 months. And there is no solid plan. And to be okay with that, I have to acknowledge the fear. It's there. The brain is doing its job, trying to keep me in predictions that keep me safe. But I also have to know that it's going to be okay. And when I check into my heart space and I try that on, going out and just creating beautiful art, shooting this documentary, and leaning into that dance with the universe, allowing the universe to bring its beautiful gifts that were totally not in my vision or in my sight at the time. And things have come out of left field that have been so beautiful. And that's the dance. Of course, we can acknowledge the fears, but we don't have to live there. And it's going to do you no good living in that. And to just recognize it, let go, check in with your heart and say, how does this truly feel?
Wow, man. Acknowledge your fears, but we don't need to live there. How beautiful is that? Wow. Here's a quote for you, Mr. Richer.
It's the beautiful unknown, and that's more beautiful because, yeah, we've talked about. I'm so excited to allow the universe to guide me, and it will be way better than anything I could have ever come up with.
I
know that. I trust that from my history.
I was just thinking. I think Josh just tied in all three words, all three subjects together right there. Trust, surrender, trust, and then comes in the unknown. So the question to ask ourselves, what are we surrendering? Another word could be letting go. What are we letting go of trying to control the outcome of everything?
Boom. There you go.
Okay. What we as guys and everybody does is that we get into a relationship, we do this, we do that. We have to know what the outcome is going to be. It's human nature. It's what we do because we need to feel safe. Our little boy, our little girl needs to feel safe and secure. So if I enter into that relationship, if I walk into that, I need to know what that outcome is. Can I trust you that the outcome is going to be what I want that outcome to be? When you just think of how finite that is, and how that keeps you in a place of just safety and security and survival. I need to know what the outcome is so then I can survive what's going to happen.
And
If we can go into
disappointment.
Yeah.
And
I don't want to feel disappointed, sad, angry. And last week, I said the reason why I stayed in something is in a relationship probably too long is because I knew what I was going to feel. So I stayed in it because I didn't want to feel those feelings.
Yeah, beautiful.
That happens anyway. So it's about tying everything in. And for me, surrendering or letting go was the biggest challenge of my life. Because of that abandonment, that betrayal, I was never modeled trust outside of myself. I always had to try to fit that square peg in the round hole constantly. And it was a willfulness. I was placing my will on something so it'd be safe and secure. One of the things that when I started as a photographer, I had a vision of what I wanted the outcome to be. And as an artist, it is the worst thing that you could ever do. But because then you're denying the free flow of energy within your whatever you're doing. You're denying the universe in that in that photo shoot. So one of the things that I learned, and I learned this by watching Inside the Action Studio, an interview with Gwyneth Paltrow, and this was probably 20 years ago. And James Lipton asked her, "What is your process?" She goes, "I really don't have a process, but before every scene that I do, I close my eyes and I ask the universe or God to keep me open and free, to allow me to use my talents and gifts in this scene, and whatever I need to do, it will happen." That's letting go. That's surrendering in the moment. And before every photo shoot that I do, I leave the group and I go and I sit by myself. I close my eyes and breathe, and that is my mantra. So I'm free when I walk in there, that I'm showing up. My talents and gifts are going to do, but then the free flow of energy is flowing, and all you're there is to respond and be in the moment and capture the moments. And if we can look at our life that way, that is being in the now. That is being free and surrendering to what is in the now and in the moment in life.
I love that, Jeff. What I really heard there is about surrender is just us stepping out of trying to control. It's, as you shared, I think we're all saying it tonight, when we are willing to trust that something, the universe, something greater than ourselves, is gonna lead us to what's best for us, and surrender that we have to control the outcome, we lose a quick 10, 15, 20 pounds. And it opens us up to receive the gifts of the moment, even when those gifts may have some pain associated with it. Before we jump into the last segment of our show this evening, I want to circle back to two of our viewers. One, I want to thank Jazz Star for expanding upon the question I asked her. And she just, to paraphrase Jazz, she basically said she had a rock bottom, and that for her was her beginning of her healing journey. And that's beautiful, Jazz. Thank you for sharing that, showing some vulnerability with us one more time. I also want to come back, something that Chad Fox says. He says, "I run into a problem when I give trust, but feel it isn't being equally reciprocated." And that's an interesting statement. Chad, I want to thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to invite one of you guys, Josh or Ev, why don't you break that down from your interpretation, what Chad just shared. What are you hearing in that right now? Any any key principle or tools or tips you could share with Chad?
Look, it goes back into, I think we discussed it a couple of weeks ago with that equal receive and give within a transaction, so to speak. But for me, I never go into any transaction, energetic we're talking about here, whether that means whatever sort of transaction between you, a human being, a thing, person, place, or thing outside of yourself, with any expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So that way I don't take it personally if I don't get that same thing back, which allows me not to react to the situation, but only respond.
Mm-hmm.
That was going to be my question too to Chad, was what are his expectations out of that relationship? And expectations are dangerous. It opens us up for disappointment, hurt, pain. And that's where trust and surrender are so powerful, because you're freeing yourself of all of that disappointment and pain and sorrow, and they're tied so closely together.
And again, Chad, brother, realize that we're human beings.
Yeah. Oh my God.
No one's perfect down here, man.
You know what? One of the things that I learned a long time ago from Robert Baker was to incorporate the word disappointment into my life.
Incorporate
the word disappointment in my life, because then you could leave the drama of the situation. And it came from there's a woman back then who I really, really liked and wanted to go out with, and we set up a date and everything like that. And I was early on in my self-exploration and my growth and my healing. And the woman just said, I can't make it. And I wish I had that tool back then. How old do I feel now? And I was devastated. So look at it this way. This was over 20 years ago. I was devastated that she said, I can't make it tonight. What I heard was, you don't love me. You don't care about me. You found another guy that's better than me, who's better than me to go out with. All of this stuff came up, and it became very dramatic within me. Fortunately that I was working with Robert at the time, and he looked at me, he goes, so you were disappointed? And I went, no, I was devastated. He goes, no, Jeff, you were disappointed. And he goes, can you incorporate, let's look at where you're going. That little boy is going to that place, but the adult was like, oh, bummer, you can't make it tonight. Okay, how about next Thursday?
Yeah.
I reacted in that whole situation from these deep wounds that she couldn't make it on Friday night because she doesn't love me.
I'm not enough.
Yeah.
I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. What is she going to do? And a lot of people come from that place. So I had learned at that point to incorporate the word disappointment in my life that takes the edge off of everything.
That's beautiful, Jeff.
Go
ahead, Josh.
Good.
Real quick, we are the meaning makers.
We're
the world. Think of all the stimulus outside of us. Sound is just waves traveling through the air. Sight is light bouncing off of objects.
Yeah.
That's all we take in the world, is light and sound and touch. But we're the ones who have to put meaning to it, to that light and those sounds and those words that other people say, or their actions or whatever. And we're the ones putting all the meaning on that. So
yeah, that's true. Josh, I just want to piggyback on what you just shared. And when we're talking about trust, and we're gonna go to the wrap in a moment here, but I'm going to share an example with you of how we create stories around a lack of trusting someone in our life. So, for example, A couple of years ago, when one of my sons we were in and out. Let's say our relationship was not stable due to how things had turned out for him and the family, and my wife and I breaking up. And I sent him a text, and he didn't respond to me. And so there was silence. And I went right to, I'm not trusting the relationship one more time. I'm now doubting. And I went right to, I created a whole story around that experience that I'm out again. He's angry at me. He just got triggered. I had created a whole story around that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear from him for 3 weeks.
Hmm.
And I get a text from him. And he says, Dad, I just got home. I've been traveling. I was out of the country traveling in Europe, and I was using a different phone. I didn't even have my phone turned on. I just picked up your message. I'm sorry I missed your text.
Mm.
And you tortured yourself for 3
Sorry.
weeks.
Those stories we tell ourselves, yeah, man.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. That's just one example. Now, what that was about for me was, it was about trust.
Yeah.
It was about trust. Now, here's the question. It truly is, when we go to lack, when we create a story around someone else's behavior, we are questioning if we're not trusting that they want to be with us anymore, that they love us, that they want to be in a relationship. Is it really about them, or is it about us? Now, I could tell you, for me, every time I go to a lack of trust, it never is about the person I'm in a relationship with, whether it be a child, whether it be my ex-wife, a friend, an employer, even a client, a prospect in business. It always comes back to me. It comes back to my own insecurities in that moment, my own story that I create as that younger self that still is alive within me. And so it's practice. It's something we talked about on prior episodes. It's about commitment and practice, and to deny it as the truth. For me to remind myself the next time I go to doubt, I could say, is it true? And then I could go, no, it's not going to be true. It's just another BS story, a belief system story, a BS story that I just created about this relationship that most likely isn't true. How many times you all have sold something in your lifetime or been in sales? How many times did I think I didn't get the deal because the prospect is not responding to me? Right? And then I create a story around that. And then I find out 3 months later that he just wasn't ready. He had higher priorities, but now he's ready to do business with me.
Yeah.
And again, I created a whole story with resentments and anger. And as Jeff Fasano said, disappointment, self-doubt, all around something that wasn't true. So we have an opportunity to learn how to really challenge ourselves, challenge that negative ego that takes us to lack, and say, is it true? Is it possible that we're making up another BS story? And so with that, what I'd like to do is take us into we're going to go into musical chairs right now. And how this segment works, you guys know, when you get moved into the spot right next to me in the upper ledge here, you'll have 3 minutes to close us out, either with closing thoughts from tonight's conversation, key principles or tips or tools on how to break through lack of trusting of yourself, others, living in the unknown and being okay with that, and or surrender. So with that, Josh, since you started us off, I'm dropping you down. You're going to get a break. Jeff Fasano, you're going to take us out with 3 minutes.
Well, I'm glad you did that, because I'm going to, you just opened up, as Jay Rothman usually does at the end of our shows, opens up a whole new doorway that we could do another hour with. What Jay just described there was the need to try to control the outcome of something. And if everybody could look at that, everybody could hear what Jay just said and ask yourself, where have I done that in my life? I know that as a photographer, and it actually happened about a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, I was contacted by a record company to do a photo shoot, and they asked me, what are my rates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it happens a lot in what I do. And you talk to them, then you give them your rates, and you might not hear from them for 2 weeks or something like that. And then all of a sudden you start conjuring, in your mind, you start telling yourself stories, and it goes on, and it could be endless. What I have learned to do is, if in fact I start doing that, I give myself a little rope and I let myself go there. But then what I do is I say to myself, if that in my soul plan, if I'm supposed to have that gig, I will.
Mm-hmm.
If in fact I'm not supposed to have that gig and it's not in my soul plan, I won't get that gig. And it's not personal, has nothing to do with me, and it has nothing to do with them. And that is how I have learned to dance with life. If I come from a place of my soul plan, and I'm inserting the best of me through honoring and valuing me, being honest, being truthful, coming from my heart space and my soul space, doing the best I can, and then letting it go or surrendering. You let it go to the universe. I made my bid. I spoke to them. Here's what I can do. They looked at my website. They know me now. They felt my energy, and then I let it go. But I do give myself that rope. This is what I'm asking folks to do. When you're in a relationship or you make a phone call or something's out there, look at where you might start to try to control the outcome and start making it about you, and then projecting what's going on inside of you onto them, and then start saying, okay, they're doing this, they're doing that. Give yourself that moment, and then ask yourself, if it's in my soul's divine plan, if it's in my soul plan, then it will be mine. Or if it's meant to be, which means if it's meant to be in my soul plan, it will be. And that's the ultimate trust. That's the ultimate surrender. And then you're in the unknown of life.
Beautiful.
Being who you are.
Beautiful.
Magic, brother. Love it.
Love it.
You will be. I love it.
But that takes practice.
Kristen says, completely agree, Jeff. I believe exactly what is happening is how it is supposed to be, and that keeps my soul in peace. Kristen, coming in from the Midwest, thank you so much for sharing that.
Beautiful.
Josh, I'm gonna have you slide right back into that spot. And Jeff, thank you so much for that beautiful close. That was just spot on. Thank you.
Yeah. Gosh, Jeff, that was. I was trying to think. I just had something that you popped up in me. Was that? And I'm trying to go back to what it was.
Surrender it.
Yeah. Right. Just let go.
Do what you always do, Josh.
Just open my mouth.
Let the universe start speaking through you.
I know, right? This whole show is trust and surrender for us.
Yeah.
It was a challenge to get used to at first, showing up super vulnerable with no plan.
No plan.
That could be terrifying, and was in the beginning when we started this show. But wow, man, so many beautiful things, Jeff. Just letting go of that need to know the outcome, letting go of that. Surrender has been the most beautiful thing in my life, and I will admit it was the hardest to get. So if there's anything that I can say or do to inspire others to seek surrender harder and lean into surrender deeper, there's been nothing but joy and wonderful things on the other side of that lesson. And every time I lean in harder, I'm rewarded, and the outcomes are always, wow. I mean, I didn't really have a plan in this life, and I ended up, moving out here and getting into TV, and then I, did the startup, and then that crashed. That obviously wasn't the plan, but that taught me, I studied depression, anxiety, which taught me to look into neuroscience, and then I got into this passion of helping other people. So that super hard event led me to my true passion. And so I've had a very unconventional life that has led me all over the map. And it's been way more beautiful than I could have ever imagined, than those expectations that I had and that I battled with and wrestled with all through my, early 30s, into my mid and late 30s, that caused me so much pain, all the expectations that just caused so much disappointment, and all of that negative self-talk that I did to myself because my life wasn't turning out. All of the most wonderful things have come out of left field, out of trust, out of surrender. There's some big, beautiful things happening in my life right now that are just amazing and magical, and I couldn't have ever planned this out. So I can't stress enough that it is strange to go through and really learn trust and really fully let go, like what Jeff was saying, and Ev and Jay and all of us are saying, is that to truly 100% let go. I have been rewarded so handsomely in my life when I do, and it's worth getting through it, and it's worth working at it. It's worth staying at it, because I stand here in front of all of you today just so deeply grateful at where my life has turned out. And it wasn't anything close to what I ever expected.
Exactly.
Magic, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, take a nice deep breath, Josh. Richard, seriously.
All of us.
So grateful.
How does it feel to hear you say those words right now?
Oh man.
Wow.
The old me probably would have said, whatever, old man, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to make this happen.
Young man.
Yeah, but it's just beautiful. The most beautiful things have come out of letting go.
Yeah.
Mm.
When we try to control everything, the energy flow is stopped and clogged.
Hey, Ev, before you jump in, I just want to acknowledge Carrie Crary coming in somewhere from Arizona. She says, this show has been epic timing for me. Thank you all. I needed this feeding. Wow.
Beautiful.
Magic.
I just want to thank you, Carrie, because this is why we do this show. It's not about the show. It's about the message. And we're here to hopefully inspire, touch other people's lives right on time. And just to share our own experience, our own message of living a healthier choices than what we ever had before, as men especially, and to hopefully to touch and tag some men that are sick and tired of thinking that the way they were taught to live is the way they need to stay, when in fact it's not the truth. It's a lie. There's another way to live life. We all have choices. And so with that, again, thank you, Carrie, for acknowledging that. And you made my night tonight. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Evis Love, you are up. You got 3 minutes, my friend.
Oh, my brother. And as always, man, Jeff and Josh, my brother, absolutely honor my brothers, just sharing that last takeaway for us both. And all of our sisters and brothers on the other side of the pond, man, again, without you guys supporting us on at Real Men Real Talk Live, we wouldn't be turning up talking real men talk. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. And look, I've picked up 5 big tools tonight, brothers and sisters, just on listening, just on observing, just sitting back in that stillness. Notice yourself talk, my brothers and sisters. Notice that you talk to yourself consciously and subconsciously. Is it the inner child? Is it based on past circumstances, situations that may not have been favorable within your life? Are you able to then replace some of this negative, we may call it, self-talk, with some positive mantras or affirmations to say that I am safe, to say that I am secure, to say I am worthy? You know, once we start to sit with our thoughts, we're able to notice the self-talk and these perpetuating emotions that are driven repetitively that we can become under control of unconsciously, that create some of these programs, belief, be-life systems. Then we can start replacing them with things that we do want to see in our reality. It starts to build self-confidence within ourselves. It starts to build self-esteem that you may not have had as the inner child. You know, commit to yourself. I keep saying this, show after show and show. Commit to yourself. And one thing for me, if someone hadn't been faithful in my life, ask yourself, brothers and sisters, had I been faithful to myself? Have I been turning up in my life? Or has it been a lie? Commit to yourself. Make little small H-word habits, goals, and commit to them. They don't have to be massive. They don't have to be massive 10-point plans. It may be as simple as making your bed each morning. It may be as simple as washing the dishes before you go to bed. Put my hand up, I love doing that. But once you start to build some of this self-esteem, some of this confidence within thyself, and commit to yourself and make these promises and stay faithful to you, then, my brothers and sisters, those toxic people that we're talking about on tonight's show, they come up. They come up from the underground, from the underworld. They appear. We could be living in a very, very toxic time. But 2020, the year of plenty, has been a year of cleanse. The vision was for you to see the toxicity. So if there are toxic people in your surroundings, in your environment that you're aware of, that can't lift you to your fullest, your unlimited, best potential, simply allow them to walk away. You don't even have to confront them anymore because you're standing in your own skin. And my last tool I picked up here tonight, my brothers and sisters, spend time all alone. Spend time taking yourself out. Coffee date. Spend time all alone going to a cinema. Once you sit with yourself, you start to realize that true independence, you don't need these codependencies within your life and that reality of those toxic people that may have been in your circle. Once you start to be comfortable with that self-talk, with understanding a little bit more about that conscious, those subconscious programs that we've been talking about, you start committing to you, be more faithful to you, you're able to sit all alone, then we can do it as one in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Fuck, Ev.
What? I want to know what he's drinking. I want some of that green juice.
Kombucha tonight, brother.
Good Lord.
If somebody isn't faithful to you,
How are you not faithful?
how are you not being faithful to yourself?
Another show, brother. Another show.
Jeez.
Dude, if somebody is not being faithful to you, where are you not being faithful to yourself? Folks, if there are any tools that you could take away from tonight, I'm going to say it again. If somebody is not being faithful to you, where are you not being faithful to yourself?
Yeah, man.
Love that. Powerful, powerful. Yeah, part of what we do is we're here to not just share our experiences, but also to share liquid gold, tools, principles, steps, insight, inspiration, and most importantly, hope. And for me, hope means healing our perspective every day. That's what we do on Real Men, Real Talk Live. It's simple, not easy, because we've got layers, we've got decades stacked up on top of each other. But when we are ready to have the courage to break it down and step in and show up and grow up for our younger self, it's infinite. The possibilities are infinite. Trust for me is quite the topic. I never quite understood that word. And I shared with you guys before, at one time, the last therapist that I saw, as we were wrapping up one of my sessions, he said to me, "You're going to have to learn how to trust yourself." And I looked at him and he said, "Time's up. See you next week." I got left holding that. And I never went back to really circle back to that and ask him, "Tell me more. What do you mean by that, Doc?" And it wasn't until about 3 years later that I was out in nature where I get my downloads, and it came back to me and I understood exactly what he meant. I had to learn how to trust myself. For me to put blind faith in others, as Jeff said earlier, blind faith, and trust others, when I couldn't even trust my own thoughts, my own choices, my own behaviors, how unfair of it was for me to trust others. And what I've also learned today is that if we are carrying our wounds from earlier years in our life as adults today, so many of us are like lapdogs. We just want to be liked and loved. And someone, all they have to do is wink at us or smile at us or say something nice, and we go right to immediate trust. And that's where it gets a little complicated, because not everybody is trustworthy and not everybody has loving motives. They have self-serving motives. And then we get roped in, we get seduced into a relationship that is not good for us because we haven't taken time to date. Now, I'm talking metaphorically dating. I'm not talking major commitment necessarily, but that does happen too. But ultimately, our responsibility is to do some vetting, listen to the signposts, pay attention to the words they speak and how they show up, and then trust that, because that is where our intuition is telling us it's probably not a good relationship. It's not someone that's trustworthy in our life.
Mm.
And as Eva said, we don't have to give an explanation. We can detach with love and just step out. We could do a back dance. We could step back. That, my friends, is what self-love is about today. Learning how to first trust ourselves so that we could learn how to trust others. And with that, I want to thank our viewers for joining us this evening in Real Men, Real Talk Live. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation tonight. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks,
And
buddy.
I'm looking forward to next week's topic. I think we already may have it picked out, and it's a hot one. It is
they're always hot, Jay.
Yeah, I'm not going to give it away though, because I want to trust our viewers that they're going to like it, and they don't have to know what it is right now. They can surrender the idea. They don't have to know. No one's going to give it away, but it's going to be a topic that men and women want to hear about. It's a hot one. So with that, guys, thank you so much for joining me on Real Men, Real Talk Live. We'll see you next Tuesday, right, Josh? You back next Tuesday, right? We're not flipping back to Fridays yet, are we?
I'm still working next week, yeah, but
Okay.
We're just doing rap. So, but there's no show, so we could move back to Friday.
Look out.
Well, we'll have to make that announcement.
Yeah.
We'll make the announcement. Yeah. Jeannie Cass says, Jay Rothman, loving faith. There is so much hope. Yes, yes, yes. And with that,
Beijos.
I love you guys. We'll see you next week.